I remember the moment the light dimmed. It was not the fading of a sun behind clouds or the curtain of twilight descending upon the earth. It was a silence, a stillness so vast it reverberated through the foundations of heaven itself. The hosts around me, who had sung since before the birth of stars, grew quiet, and their golden wings lowered in awe and confusion. For the Lamb of God, the Word through whom we were made, was dying among men. I, Michael, who had stood guard over Eden's gate and led the armies of the Most High against rebellion, felt a tremor run through the spheres of creation. It was as though the breath of the Almighty hesitated, not out of weakness, but out of solemn, deliberate restraint. From the throne, light rippled outward, dimming as it reached the outer courts. Seraphim, who once blazed like living flame, now burned with a somber hue. In the courts of praise, harps were lowered. Every angel knew something beyond our comprehension was taking place upon the dust of the world. Far below, clouds swirled over a hill called Golgotha. I looked and saw him, the one I had known before the mountains were lifted. The Word now clothed in mortal weakness, nailed to wood he himself had once created. Around him the air shuddered with human cries and the jeers of soldiers. Darkness gathered at midday. The Father's gaze remained upon the scene, unblinking, eternal. His will was unfolding, and yet to us it felt as though the heart of heaven was breaking. Gabriel stood beside me, his radiance subdued. "It is permitted," he whispered. His voice trembled. A rare thing among us. "Does creation know what it is witnessing?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "Not yet, but all will know soon." Then came the tremor, not of the earth, but of the spiritual realm itself. From the far reaches where the fallen brooded, a stirring began. Shadows shifted, ancient chains rattled. The adversary knew. Lucifer's laughter slithered through the void, not triumphant, but defiant, like one mocking his own doom. "So this is your plan, Most High? To die among them?" The echo spread, infecting realms unseen by mortal eyes. I felt the urge to unsheath my sword. My instinct had always been to protect, to defend the order of heaven, to crush rebellion. But the command came to my spirit as clear as thunder through calm air. "Stand still." So I stood. Every fiber of my being ached with restraint. The Son of God was yielding his life, and no legion of angels was to interfere. Time, as mortals know it, seemed to hold its breath. When he cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The sound tore through every realm. Even the stars dimmed, as though bowing in grief. I fell to one knee, covering my face with my wings. For a moment, the infinite seemed finite. Then came the final cry, not of defeat, but of completion. "It is finished." The words rolled through eternity like a command. Chains in unseen depths snapped. The veil in the temple tore, and the earth convulsed. But in the heavens there was silence. Not the silence of absence, but of reverence. The commander of heaven's hosts had laid down his life, and in that instant I understood what none of us had ever grasped. Victory could wear the face of surrender. When the breath left his body, a great wind passed through heaven. The throne blazed with unbearable brilliance, and the Father's decree went forth, "Guard the covenant. Prepare for the descent." I did not yet comprehend the full meaning, but I obeyed. I took flight from the courts of heaven, my wings catching the light of unseen dawns. Beneath me, the realms shifted. From the bright corridors of celestial fire to the shrouded plains where spirits wandered, waiting. At the edge of mortality, the veil between worlds trembled. I saw souls stirring, the righteous dead, long kept in expectation, and the shadows of the condemned watching from afar. For 3 days the worlds would hold their breath, and I, Michael, was commanded to descend into the unseen places, not to fight, but to witness, to guard, to stand beside the unseen work of redemption unfolding in realms untouched by mortal eye. So I went down. The air of that place, Sheol, the shadowed domain, was heavy with waiting. There was no sun, no sky, only an endless horizon of twilight. Souls moved like mist, some radiant with faint hope, others dimmed by centuries of sorrow. They felt my presence, and a trembling ran through them. for angels rarely entered here. A voice rose among the souls, that of Abraham, whose faith had been counted as righteousness. "The time has come, hasn't it?" he said, his spirit brightening. I bowed to him with reverence. "Yes, Father of faith. The promise you believed in has walked the earth, and though men think him dead, his victory has already begun." Then the earth above quaked again. In the distance the shadows recoiled. A light unlike any I had seen began to form in the deepest part of the abyss. I crossed the threshold into the deep, a realm that pulsed like the heartbeat of an ancient wound. The place men called Sheol was neither hell nor heaven, but a waiting chamber carved out of divine mercy. Here time had lost its measure. Every echo of human longing lingered in the air. When I entered, the dim light parted before me. Souls looked up, faces from every age, eyes wide with recognition. They remembered the name of the one who had promised redemption, though none yet knew the shape of his victory. Then the sound came, faint at first, like a note remembered. A vibration moved through the very fabric of the pit. It was the blood speaking. It had soaked into the soil above, and now its voice reached even here, proclaiming release. The shadows recoiled. I turned toward the deeper abyss, where the gates of captivity stood. They were older than the pyramids, forged from the first despair of fallen creation. They had been sealed by decree of justice until mercy itself would stand before them, and now mercy was descending. A wind began to rise from nowhere. The souls nearest the gates lifted their heads as though they felt warmth for the first time in ages. Then I saw him, not in mortal form, not bound to the broken body on the hill, but radiant with the fire of completion. The scars still shone on his hands, marks not of defeat, but of authority. Around him flowed a light that bent the darkness back upon itself. I fell to one knee. "My Lord," I said, though speech felt too small for the sight before me. He looked upon the multitude of souls, and when he spoke, the entire realm shifted. "The debt is paid. The captives will rise." The gates trembled. From the deep corners of that place, the enemy moved. The fallen gathered, rulers of cruelty, spirits of pride, those who had followed Lucifer's fall. They formed ranks in the darkness, their shapes flickering like dying stars. Lucifer himself appeared among them, his light twisted into something sharp and cold. "You step into my domain," he hissed. "This ground is mine by right of sin." The Lord answered not with argument, but with presence. The light expanded, burning through the gloom until it reached the gates. With a single word, spoken not in anger, but in truth, he shattered the locks of death. The sound was like thunder through eternity. Souls who had slept since Adam stirred awake. Abraham, David, Ruth, Isaiah, each rose with faces shining. "This is the day we long to see," Abraham cried. The adversary shrank back. I stood beside the Lord, my sword drawn but idle. There was no need for battle. The victory was in his being. The darkness folded in on itself, and the chains that had bound the righteous melted into nothingness. Then he turned to me. "Guard them, Michael." The light must pass safely through. We moved upward. He leading, the redeemed following in a river of living flame. The path out of Sheol wound through veils of shadow that shrieked as the light passed. Every lie ever whispered recoiled. Every wound ever hidden was laid bare before truth. Lucifer pursued for a time, crying out from behind, "You cannot undo what was written." But the words lost power in the rising brightness, for what had been written in wrath was being rewritten in love. We reached the edge of the mortal realm. Above us the earth still trembled. Soldiers at the hill stumbled and fell. The centurion's voice broke the silence. Surely this was the Son of God. His words echoed upward like an offering. I watched as the Lord's Spirit hovered near his broken body. Angels lined the unseen air around the cross. Gabriel, Raphael, legions more, each silent, wings folded. No one moved until the Father's decree would call for resurrection. He turned to me once more. "Hold the watch," he said softly. "No hand unclean shall disturb this hour." And then he vanished, ascending beyond the veil that even we could not cross into the heart of the Father's mystery. So we kept the watch. Night fell heavy upon Jerusalem. The stars seemed dimmer, as though they too waited. Around the tomb where his body would soon be laid, We set our guard, invisible, immovable, waiting for dawn that had not yet been born. The earth below still groaned with the struggle between hope and despair. Demons prowled in the shadows, whispering among men fear, doubt, confusion. They sought to turn mourning into finality, but the command was clear. None shall touch the Holy One's rest. At times I felt the weight of those hours. For the first time since creation, heaven's armies stood without their king. Every angel, from the mightiest throne to the smallest messenger, waited in silent readiness. Even the winds held their breath. In the distance I could still hear the echo of his voice in Sheol. The captives will rise. Those words became my anchor. When I looked upon the world of men, I saw light. A beam of light, pure and narrow, descended from the throne of the Almighty, piercing every layer between heaven and earth. The third morning rose with a hush unlike any other. No trumpet, no thunder, only the pulse of creation remembering how to breathe again. I stood upon the ridge above the tomb as mist curled through the olive trees. Every leaf trembled with anticipation. Even the wind seemed to whisper, "He will rise." Below, the Roman guards paced, weary from fear they did not understand. Their armor clicked softly, their eyes heavy. They could not see the circle of light expanding in the unseen realm, a vast halo stretching outward from the heart of the tomb. From the throne a voice spoke, not in words but in command. It reached me through every star, clear and final. Now, the command for which all heaven had waited. I drew my sword. Its edge blazed, not for battle but for proclamation. Around me a host appeared, Gabriel radiant beside me, Raphael with healing light streaming from his wings, legions ranked in silence. None moved until I did. We descended. The air split as we entered the mortal sphere. The guards fell backward, their torches snuffed out by the wind of our passing. We landed before the stone, and the earth quaked, not in destruction, but in reverence. The seal of Rome glowed faintly, powerless against what approached. I touched the stone. It pulsed once under my hand, then burst outward with a sound like 1,000 heartbeats. Light flooded the garden, warm, living light that had weight and music in it. The air itself sang. He stepped out, not as the broken man who had hung upon the cross, but as life perfected. The marks of the nails gleamed like crowns of mercy. Where death had touched him, glory now poured out. Every angel dropped to one knee. I bowed my head low, my wings folding tight against my back. There was no need for words. All creation was speaking them for us. He looked upon me and smiled, the same calm, knowing smile he had worn when he told the storm to be still. "Peace be upon you, Michael," he said. "The watch is kept." I rose. "The worlds await your word, my lord." He nodded. "Then let them hear it." He vanished in the blink of a sunrise, appearing where his followers hid behind bolted doors. We did not follow. That meeting was his alone to have with those he loved. We waited outside, guardians of the unseen tide that now flowed from his resurrection. All around the world, souls stirred. Children who had never spoken whispered prayers in their sleep. Priests of forgotten temples looked to the east and felt their idols tremble. Even the oceans, restless since the fall, grew calm for a breath. I looked toward the realm below, the abyss we had left behind. Its fires guttered. Chains once thought eternal lay scattered. The fallen crouched in silence, watching the light rise higher than they could bear. Lucifer stood apart from them, his eyes dimmed. He knew the war was not over, but he also knew this: the grave would never again hold dominion. He turned and fled deeper into shadow. For now he would bide his time. We followed our Lord as he ascended from place to place, unseen by men yet felt in every breath of hope. When he walked beside two travelers on the road, the air shimmered. Even the dust recognized his tread. When he broke bread, the veil between heaven and earth thinned until I thought the stars themselves would spill into daylight. I understood then what the silence of the first day had meant. It had not been the absence of God. It had been the gathering of every word, every promise, every heartbeat of creation, waiting for this single command: rise. When the time came for him to ascend fully, we assembled once more. Mount Olivet glowed under the morning sun. His followers stood below, faces lifted, hearts raw with wonder. I hovered above, unseen but near enough to feel the warmth of his presence. He looked to heaven and said, "Father, into your hands I return." And the skies opened. No army of angels could have sung loudly enough to match that light. It was the sound of every note of praise since the dawn of time, colliding into one endless chord. The clouds parted, and he rose, leaving behind not emptiness, but mission. The promise of return hung in the air like fragrance after rain. When he passed into the throne's glory once more, the Father rose. The Son took his seat at the right hand, and all heaven bowed. The redeemed followed in procession, the souls of ages now clothed in new brightness. Their voices filled the vastness with a single word: worthy. I stood at the gate, sword sheathed, heart heavy with awe. For the first time since the fall of the morning star, heaven and earth were bridged again. The law had met love, and love had triumphed. Then came the final command, gentle yet vast: Michael, go. Guard the people of the covenant until the day of fulfillment. The war will continue, but the outcome is sealed. And so I descended once more, not to fight, but to stand watch, over the hearts that would carry his name, over the nations that would rise and fall until his return. After he ascended, the world did not fall silent. It breathed a long, trembling breath, as though creation itself had been holding it for millennia. From my vantage above the mount, I watched his followers remain in the sunlight long after the clouds closed behind him. They spoke little. Their hearts were too full of wonder and fear mingled together, like dawn and dusk sharing the same horizon. I did not depart. My command was to guard, not merely their bodies, but the flame that had been placed within them, the covenant reborn, now written not on stone, but in human hearts. For many days they prayed in the upper room. To mortal eyes they seemed abandoned, yet unseen hosts surrounded them. I stood at the threshold, wings half folded, watching tongues of fire gather above their heads. When the Spirit descended, it was not in fury but in music, notes older than language, weaving through their breath and their courage. They spoke, and the world shifted. From that small room, the covenant spread like sunlight touching every nation. In those early years, I traveled unseen through lands that had never spoken his name: Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, the coasts of Africa, the frozen north where no temple had ever stood. Wherever his word took root, I kept vigil. Not every place welcomed light. Old powers stirred, temples of stone shuddered as their idols cracked. Spirits once worshipped as gods whispered in fury to the kings who served them. They sought to drown the new faith in blood before it could grow. I remember one night beneath the catacombs of Rome. Torches flickered on damp stone. Men and women prayed in whispers while soldiers marched above, their sandals clanging like iron thunder. I stood among the shadows unseen, while the air itself seemed to hold its breath. A child began to sing, a thin, trembling note of praise. The soldiers paused above, confused, then moved on. That single song, frail as it was, echoed through heaven like the roar of 1,000 trumpets. Faith had taken root where fear should have ruled. I looked upward, and the veil between worlds thinned. Gabriel's voice came faintly, "The covenant endures." And I knew our watch was not in vain. Centuries turned as moments do for us. Empires rose and fell. Each generation shaped the covenant anew, carving his name into language, art, law, and memory. At times the light burned fiercely, at others it flickered beneath the weight of pride and greed. But always there remained a remnant, souls who loved purely, who fed the hungry, who forgave. Their kindness was our signal fire, and we guarded them as kings guard their crowns. I saw the great councils gather to speak of his nature and his truth. I walked unseen through halls where parchment and prayer collided. Sometimes I whispered courage into hearts on the edge of doubt. Sometimes I stood between a believer and the blade meant to silence them. When plagues swept the earth, I wept with those who wept. When nations warred, I shielded the innocent who called upon his name. Through every darkness, the covenant pulsed like a heartbeat too deep to die. Yet not all wars are fought with swords. The adversary learned patience. He traded open battle for subtle corrosion, turning love into argument, zeal into cruelty, unity into suspicion. He whispered to kings that power could sanctify their violence. He whispered to priests that gold could justify silence. At times I felt the weight of despair. Could humanity hold what heaven had given? But whenever doubt rose in me, I would look upon a single act of mercy. A mother's prayer for her child, a prisoner forgiving his captors, a scholar writing words of peace by candlelight. And I would remember the voice that broke the stone. The light will not fail. There were moments when the veil between heaven and earth grew thin again. Saints at their final breath would see me and smile, whispering, I am not alone. I would bow, not as a master, but as a witness to their courage. Each soul lifted became another star in the growing constellation of redemption. Through ages I saw knowledge blossom. Men mapped the heavens, unaware that angels had once flown through those same constellations. They built machines that touched the void, yet still cried out for meaning. Even in their science, I could hear the echo of faith, the desire to know the source. And so I remained, patient, guarding not temples of stone, but hearts of flesh. For the covenant was no longer kept by law, but by love. In later centuries, I stood upon battlefields where nations called themselves righteous as they slaughtered one another. Blood-soaked banners that bore his name, and I felt the heavens tremble with sorrow. But amid the smoke, I always found one who knelt, not to victory, but to mercy. One soldier binding the wound of an enemy. One nurse whispering prayer over the dying. Those small acts anchored the world. When the earth cracked with wars, when the sky was darkened by the ash of human pride, the ages turn like pages in the breath of God. Empires that once roared are dust beneath the roots of new cities. Yet I remain, silent, unseen, waiting. Not weary, for angels do not tire, but heavy with remembrance. Every soul that has believed, every tear that has fallen in faith, is written in the radiance of heaven. I have watched countless generations rise and vanish like waves, yet the covenant endures. Not as ink, but as heartbeat. Sometimes in the dim corners of the world, I hear them still. A child whispering the name of Jesus before sleep, a prisoner singing softly in the dark, a dying saint smiling toward unseen light. These moments are brighter to me than the birth of stars, but the world trembles again. I feel it in the pulse of creation, a gathering, a convergence. Not the end, but the nearing of fulfillment. The adversary knows it too. His whispers grow urgent, his shadows restless. He walks not in flames now, but in indifference, teaching hearts to forget that they are divine reflections. He no longer fears the cross, he fears remembrance. For when humanity remembers the light, he vanishes like mist at dawn. So I walk among you more often now, in the hum of hospitals, in the silence before judgment, in the gaze of those who choose mercy instead of vengeance. Every act of grace is a signal fire, each kindness a sword drawn without blood. You think heaven distant because it is silent, but silence is not absence. It is readiness. In nights when the earth quakes, when the seas rise and the skies burn with your own inventions, I hear the question rise from countless lips. Where is God? And I long to whisper. He never left. He waits within you, in the courage you mistake for your own, in the love that keeps breaking through your fear. The Father still looks upon the world through the wound of the Son, and through that wound pours endless mercy. It stains the hands of the forgiven until they become healers themselves. I have seen humanity at its worst. Cities consumed by greed, truth twisted into spectacle. Yet even there, the faint hum of faith persists. Light survives, not in cathedrals or crowns, but in the trembling hearts that dare to hope. The heavens are not idle while you sleep. Beyond your skies, the armies of light stand poised, not for conquest, but for reunion. Their swords rest downward, their faces toward the earth. They wait for the sound that ends waiting, the note of purest command, the final breath of time. I do not know the hour. Only the Father holds that secret within his eternal stillness. But when it comes, the trumpet will not sound as thunder, but as music every creature recognizes, the song of home. Then shall I rise once more, not as guardian, but as herald. The graves will yield their dreamers, and the stars will bow their crowns. The sea will return its wanderers, and light will embrace every shadow that ever dared to flee it. And he, the one who broke the stone, will stand again upon the earth, not in suffering, but in splendor. His scars will gleam like portals of mercy, and every nation will see in his face the reflection of its own redemption. Until that moment, I keep the watch. The sword remains at my side, not for wrath, but remembrance. For I was there when death was defeated, and I will be there when death is unmade. When you lift your eyes to the stars and feel something eternal stir within you, know that it is not imagination, it is inheritance. When you forgive, you join the melody that began before the worlds were born. And when you love, truly love, you draw heaven closer than your own breath. I am Michael, servant of the Most High, witness to the cross, guardian of the covenant, watcher of the long road between promise and fulfillment. The dawn that broke the stone still burns in my wings, and until the trumpet sounds, I will keep it lit for you. Thank you for listening, just watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications button to be updated on our next episode when it drops on the channel.